Alright, now that we have everything back together, it's time to get back to the screws behind the faceplate. I used an old credit card to get back behind there. I don't know how easy this is going to be on some people's cars. Mine, luckily, it was garage kept most of its life, so it never really was out in extreme heat all the time. I would imagine a car that sat out baking in the sun every day probably is even harder to get to, because the glue probably all baked on here. So taking this off might not even be possible for some people, but you'll have to try at least and get back there. But I didn't really want to take this off completely when I did the job, because I was afraid the glue might lose its adhesive power if I had it off for an extended period. But so just gotta pull it off best you can. There's 3 holes back here. One here, here, and here. So oh, and you got to put this that trip odometer back together too. Let's see if we can't do that with it already on. Alright, that goes on pretty easily. Actually, now that I look at it, the holes that I showed you before aren't where the screws for this go back. They actually go right next to the mileage gauge is one. I'm going to stop the film and put that in. I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so we got that one screw in, goes right in there to the right of the odometer. I've been using a like an eyeglass screwdriver. So these screws are really small. Alright, so that one's in. Next one, yeah, there was some down at the bottom. I think the other 2 are at the bottom. Really was a poor design, but I guess most people, you would expect to just buy a whole new speedometer, but I guess they never planned on the cars becoming obsolete like they are. So the other one goes in right here, right in there. I'm going to stop the tape again, put that in. Alright, so we got that one in. That's like on the almost right behind the 140 on the speedometer. So that's tight as it's going to get. And the other one looks like it's going to be right behind like the 25 mark. That one's not going to be too easy to get to, because you got this that post there for the trip odometer. Really feels like you're ripping this thing apart, but it seems to be pretty sturdy, so luckily You just don't want to crease it when you're pulling it back like this. And I think you'll be alright if you just bend it back without folding it at all. But you can see this goes right down here. I'm going to put that in now and stop the film. Alright, so we got that one back in, right down there. And it's pretty much time to put the faceplate back as good as you can get. There's like a blue piece of plastic back there to help illuminate it. So you just make sure that lines up back in there. And it looks surprisingly pretty much like it was untouched. Last thing to do is reinstall your speedometer gear, speedometer needle. And remember, it's got that really fine little post it's got to go on, so you got to be really careful not to bend it. But from what I've seen online on some other posts, you can pretty much put it on anywhere and then just turn it back. Once it's on there, it automatically will stop it wherever it's set to stop, and you can just force the needle down by hand to where it should be. I believe usually they're around that spot when they're in the car and you're not moving. But if you need to move it up further, you can always turn it all the way around and then just keep turning it until it stops and go a little bit further. It's not going to break it if you do that, as long as you're twisting only by the center. You don't want to, force the needle itself anywhere. And if it goes too far, if it's up too far this way, you can force it back that way, or come back around. Let's see, now it's up a little bit too far, so go back down, and hopefully that'll be right. And I would say leave the clear faceplate off when you first put the speedometer back in the car, and either use like there's a speedometer app you can get for your phone now, and just drive with that for a minute or two and make sure they're pretty much close to what it reads on your speedometer here. But if it's off a lot, you can adjust the needle a little bit when you have to, when you're stopped again. Or you can have a friend drive next to you and tell them to put up their hand when they're at like 30 miles an hour or whatever, and make sure yours is still at the same speed too. But I don't know how accurate those apps are on the phone, so what I did was before I took this all apart, I used it and just made sure when I was going 40 miles an hour on the car speedometer, I know my app said I was going 37, so I'll just when I test drive mine, I'm just going to make sure it's the same again with the phone. When the phone says 37, I'm going 40 in the car. That way, at least it'll be as accurate as it was before. And that's about it. So next we got to put it back in the car. So I'll see you when I get back out there.